knitted itself up behind them as they stepped through and found themselves in an open city court in the bright daytime. The business day was in full bustle. The merchants and the bankers hurried about, counting the loose change in their pockets as they went with a chink, chink, chink that sounded very like the pretty silver bells on a sleigh. They gathered in knots and gossiped like charwomen. Worse, really, for whilst a charm might just break a confidence or two with their tittle-tattle, these gentlemen could wipe out the liquidity of a company with a sly word, or cause a run on a bank for the want of twopence if the mood took them. There was one knot of men bigger than the next. Marley recognised them as men he'd done a considerable amount of business with during his life. They were laughing and roaring at some titbit, and Marley, wishing to know the source of the merriment, pointed a finger to tempt Scrooge to draw nearer. Scrooge took his cue admirably and padded over to the throng. No idea what did it," said a great fat man at the centre of the group, who gave out a belch that spoke of port and high cheeses. "He's dead, that's all I know. Probably got it into his head that they were planning to tax air and decided to do without." A great grunting laugh belched from the company, filling the air with spittle and derision. "When was he taken?" inquired a whelp of a man who Marley remembered as being the junior partner in a tea clipper company, who had never adventured more than half a mile out of the city himself.
He wasn't taken. Not him,"
spouted another, who'd not bothered to finish his mouthful of hot chestnuts before beginning his jibe.
Beelzebub would have to send at least 3 bailiffs with the right paperwork to claim his soul.
And even then, he'd have to send them away, saying he'd still had 40 days to pay, snorted another man, who capped his pronouncement with a pinch of snuff and a great sneeze. The entire company retched with merriment, sending half-chewed chestnuts, clouds of snuff, snot, and spit into the surroundings. "Pigs," thought Marley. "That's all they are. I would the world could see them for what they are." And with that, he swished his scythe across the air in a gesture as if to dismiss them. But that keen blade cut, and it cut deep and fine. It did not injure the gentleman, but it did cut away a layer of something. The gentleman's features became just a little rounder, their noses a little flatter, their chins and teeth a little more jutting, and their physiques plumper. Chestnuts crammed more food into his face as he spoke.
"When did he die?"
he sputtered. "Last night, I believe," said the whelp. He was cozying up to chestnuts, even though his closeness caused him to be showered with half-masticated food. "I thought he'd never die," said Snorter, who inhaled another great handful of snuff into his capacious, grey-stained nose. Slice! Marley took another layer of reality away. The arms were shorter, the nostrils larger, the bellies bigger. "Where's the money gone?" asked Whelp, looking to his benefactor as if he may know. Chestnuts tipped the entire bag into his mouth and crunch, crunch, crunched them.
"Not left it to me, is all I know," he
sputtered. This time, when the masticated paste hit the face of the whelp, he gratefully licked it off with a leech-like tongue. Slice! Another veil gone, the suit split, the gentleman wobbled and then fell down on all fours, and Chestnuts continued to eat. Apple cores, discarded pie crusts, orange peel, all he could lay his eyes on. The funeral will be a cheap one," said the Snorter, who was nose deep into his snuff box, sucking it up with one great breath and then shooting it out in one great sneeze. "I know of no one going to it," said the whelp, who was rubbing his body against Chestnuts. Slice! Now there was very little human about them. Their fine clothes were torn away and trampled into the dirt.
Oh, I'll go if there's food in it,
said Chestnut, who ignored the whelp's advances but fell upon the filth in the gutter with glee.
I'll go if there's money in it, said Snorter. We'll all go if there's money in it,
said another, for now it was hard to tell one from another. They were all rolling about in each other's filth and revelling in it. Slice! Suddenly the scene was back to how it was before. A knot of fine gentlemen engaged in the business of the day. I cannot abide a funeral. I cannot wear black and simply never eat lunch, said Snorter, placing the smallest amount of snuff on the crook of his little finger. Yes, I was such a good friend of the gentleman. Perhaps I should pay my respects.
To him or to his executor?
Asked Chestnuts, and the company once more took to laughing. Scrooge turned away, visibly shaken. You have shown me their souls, Spirit. Cut me not with that great blade, sir, for I be feared of what might be revealed. He moved away towards another company who were chattering about the self-same death. Much as it may have tempted Marley to pursue Scrooge, use the blade upon him and let him see what horror lay at his very core, his attention was taken by another pair of figures a little way across the court. He'd seen them before. Oh yes, from Scrooge's window. It was the shackled ghost of the banker and the poor beggar woman and her child. Still he wept, being unable to reach the key to his safe, and still she begged. Marley moved across the court towards them, and like some deathly angel stood before the figure of the stricken ghost. Momentarily distracted, the shade noticed Marley and immediately implored of him. "Help me," he cried. "Help me to help her." Marley saw the key that lay just out of the ghost's reach. If he simply moved it towards the shade, then he could open the safe. But what good would that do? It would still be tethered. Yet, if he was to cut the chain that secured the ghost to his safe, as he believed the keen blade might be able to, well, what guarantee would Marley have that the ghost would keep his word? "Please," implored the ghost, "I beg of you. I cannot bear her woes as well as my own." Perhaps this ghost was in earnest, thought Marley, and perhaps not. Something inside him told him that they were not really his chains to break, yet also he knew, bound as he was, the ghost was not free to make any choice, either for good or ill. Slice. He swung the blade down upon the chains, and they fell to pieces. Released from his prison, the ghost stumbled, then grabbed the key. He laughed with maniacal glee as he held it. "It's mine!" he shouted. "It's mine! It's mine!" As the ghost worked madly at the safe, Marley wondered, had he made the wrong decision? Presently, the safe was open, and the ghost grabbed 2 great fistfuls of money, which he then showered over the woman and her child. Now, these ghostly notes did not suddenly become real and rain down upon her, but the very moment they fell about her, another gentleman, a live gentleman, dropped a single note into her begging bowl. Not as large an amount as the ghostly banker had dropped. In fact, an exchange rate of about 1% might be near the mark. But still, to this woman, it was a fortune. She scooped it and her child up and climbed to her feet and thanked the generous living benefactor. The ghost of the banker didn't heed her thanks. He was too busy stuffing his pockets and gibbering to himself. I'll start off in the Strand. Yes, there's 1 or 2 places there that I remember the poor unfortunates frequent, and then on to Piccadilly, then Soho. Yes, the Strand, Piccadilly, Soho. Yes, all mine. It's all mine to give, and I'll give every penny I can. And he was off, coins and notes spilling from his pockets as he went. It was then that Scrooge returned to Marley's side. "I cannot find myself, Spirit. This is my usual hour, this is my usual spot, and yet I am absent, he said. As Scrooge spoke, Marley caught sight of a figure over his shoulder, standing just a little way off. Slowly it turned towards them. Its face was disfigured, half burnt away by a sickly green canker. It's evident that I have made good on my vow to change my ways. If you are hoping to find me here, then you're mistaken. Plainly, I've resolved never to visit this place again, Scrooge continued. As Scrooge chattered, Marley became aware that more and more of the figures in the court were turning towards them, and they all bore the same twisted visage as the first. In panic, he took his scythe and swung it through the air. He knew he had to escape. He felt it catch on nothingness and then cut. It split the very fabric of reality, leaving a hole that opened into darkness. Trapped now between the advancing figures and an unknowable reality beyond, Marley knew what his choice of action should be. He stepped through the hole smartly, not caring a bean if Scrooge decided to follow.